Hello, everybody. It is 3 minutes to 3 o'clock. So I'm just going to give you a couple minutes to get settled before we go ahead and start our first Impact Tuesdays of the year. So just sit tight and I will be back shortly. Okay, so it's exactly 3 o'clock. So we can go ahead and get started. So we can just be mindful of everybody's time, and Judith, of course, be mindful of your time. So welcome everyone. I am Jennifer Krishka, CEO of the Jewish Women's Foundation of the Greater Palm Beaches. And we are joined today by Judith Selzer, who is co-founder and also a board member with the Women's Foundation of Florida. I'm also a very longtime friend of mine.
And a past trustee of the Jewish Women's Foundation as well.
Yes, that's right. So thank you, Judith, for speaking with us today. I'm happy to see you.
Great to be here and so glad to get to see you as well, Jen.
So this is our first webinar of the year, so we're excited to have you on. This webinar is a little bit different than many of the ones that we did in the past, in that we often feature one of our grantees. But I thought that it would be great to start off the year by focusing on another great community organization and a really excellent program that we are happy to help promote. So we'll start off just learning a little bit more about you, Judith, and your background. And then if you would just tell us a little bit more about the Women's Foundation and what the mission is and, some of the activities that the foundation does.
Absolutely. Well, so again, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your Facebook Live program today. I've been a long-time fan and supporter of the Jewish Women's Foundation of the Greater Palm Beaches. It is a mission near and dear to my heart, and watching you all grow and have such a tremendous impact over the years has been phenomenal. And so thanks so much for inviting me to be part of the Impact Tuesdays webinars. So anyhow, so I'm Judith Selzer, and I am, in addition to loving the JWF, I'm also the co-founder and a current board member of the Women's Foundation of Florida, which has a similar mission and is a great collaborative partner of JWF. And I have been volunteering with the Women's Foundation. Gosh, now we've been around for about 11, 12 years, and our focus is on similar to JWF, it's about really empowering women and girls to be leaders, so that way we can change the world. And I originally founded the Women's Foundation of Florida as a Palm Beach County organization. And it was a couple of years ago, we changed our name from Women's Foundation of Palm Beach County and grew to be Women's Foundation of Florida. And that's been a really exciting growth. And while the global pandemic, COVID, has been devastating and particularly hard felt by women who are particularly women of color who are
Sure.
bearing the brunt of the impact of the pandemic. I am somebody who just is always poly positive and looks for the silver lining, even of horrible situations. And so, what has been really phenomenal around the growth of our programming has been the impact that going virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of our organizations are seeing that. Of course, there's nothing that can replace the in-person connections and the
Sure.
hands-on work that's done, but being able to go virtual has meant that we've been able to really grow programs across the state of Florida rapidly this year. And they're all about growing the leadership of women and girls. Um, so it's been I think a difficult year for everybody, but one where we've also been able to grow new fruitful connections and networks with folks who we maybe wouldn't have met in person.
Well, thank you. And so just you tell us a little bit about your professional hat when you're not
Yeah.
busy volunteering so much, what you
Yeah.
do professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been thrilled to work with Planned Parenthood in different capacities for, oh gosh, about probably 15 years or so now. So I've been on staff in different states. I've been a consultant in different states. And I currently serve as the Chief Strategy Officer for Planned Parenthood of Northern, Central, and Southern New Jersey, and have a dual hat and where serve as the Executive Director of the Planned Parenthood Action Fund of New Jersey, which is the state policy arm. I had held similar roles here in Florida for a number of years. Um, and now do similar work in New Jersey. And I also have a consulting firm, Selzer 360, which is a firm that works both on public affairs strategies around strategic planning, communications, campaigns, legislative affairs, and mostly what I've recently through Selzer 60 is serving as an executive coach. So working with teams and individuals to really evoke transformation, positive transformation in whatever it is their goals might be. So I've worked over the last 20 years, 15 of them mostly with Planned Parenthood, but over the last 20 years with just a host of different philanthropic and social justice organizations, and have moved around a little bit from DC to New York to Florida to I'm actually talking to you all today from Charlottesville, Virginia, where family's at while we're in quarantine, to obviously doing work in New Jersey. So I've had a really I've just been so fortunate. I've had such a phenomenal career learning from some amazing women and men about how to really be an advocate, to how to really empower others to see the voice that they have, to discover it and use it in order to make the world a better place. And I know that sounds so cliche, but like it is true that we have the
Sure.
ability, right? Like I have a voice, you have a voice, Jen, and our voices together get so loud and powerful, we actually can make a difference. And we see that every day in the work that the Jewish
Sure.
Women's Foundation does, and every day that the Women's Foundation of Florida and Planned Parenthood and other organizations do. And so I've been just incredibly fortunate to be able to meld together my values and make a career path out of it.
Sure.
You as well. So many people go to
Yes.
work every day because it's a job and you want to put food on the table and a roof over your head, and we need to do that. But to live your values out through your work every day, that's a gift.
Yes, I completely agree with you and echo all of that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Women's Foundation. So, Women on Board Leadership Academy, of course, is the main program that we're going to hear about today. But if we have time, we'll talk about some of the other
Sure.
programs too. So, can you tell me, what the thinking was behind the program and why the foundation decided to create this program? And then, a little bit of background about like how the program works and like how things are going now that it's virtual.
Yeah. So the Women on Board Leadership Academy is, I think, such a wonderful example of how we are stronger together. This is a collaborative program across about 30 different organizations that have come together, mostly from Palm Beach County, but the program is open up to anybody online because it's a virtual based program.
Right.
And it's all these women's groups and other organizations that have come together to say we want to jointly empower more women to engage in volunteer leadership in board roles. And you might be thinking, well, gosh, I serve on so many boards and it's majority women anyhow. Is this program really needed? But the fact is, it is, because we tend to see a lot of the same women on all of these boards we're serving on. A lot of us as women still need to really be encouraged to overcome that imposter syndrome and to
Sure.
recognize we absolutely are leaders in our own right, and we can still change what leadership look like, and we can deeply impact the world around us and our local communities by being on boards of nonprofits and serving on boards, advisory committees, and government service. It's one of the best kept secrets out there how many of these government board roles that are
Mhm.
out there that you can be appointed to and serve on to make a positive impact in our community. So I'm a volunteer also with the Junior League of Palm Beach County, which I'm
Mhm.
really excited about. And they had invited me and some others to start a leadership academy. And women do what women do, which is they talk to other women they know. And there was a whole host of us that are both Junior League members and Women's Foundation of Florida folks and JWFers and members of, Dress for Success and YWCA and just so many different community-based organizations. So we came together and said, let's do this jointly. And so
Mhm.
we came together and developed a vision for a 9-month board leadership program called Women on Board. Obviously, when we first envisioned this, we thought we'd be in person.
Right.
So, what's the old saying, right? Man plans and God laughs, or something
Right.
like that, right?
Right.
So we made plans. The universe laughed at us and sadly gave us this pandemic, but it has, I think, also really encouraged so many amazing women to say there are major problems in our community.
Right.
There's housing issues, there's lack of food security, just the whole idea of kids relying on school not to get necessarily an education, but because that's where they get their meals.
Right.
I mean, what is seriously wrong with our society that that's how we have set this up? I mean, on the one hand, it's a beautiful innovation that folks thought, hey,
Sure.
there's kids and they're hungry, let's make sure they can get breakfast and lunch and have a meal to take home. But the fact that when we're out of school for spring break or summers, or during a 12-month and ongoing pandemic, that there
Sure.
are people, children, who are hungry and we're not quite sure how to get them food, we shouldn't be able to look ourselves in the mirror in a world like this. So I think, seeing all of the devastating impact of the pandemic, the timing of launching this program, even though we had to make it virtual, has been surprisingly well received, because I think so many community members are saying the problems our community face, I have to do something about it.
Mhm.
And they recognize that government service, that nonprofit service is a way to lean in, share
Mhm.
their ideas, and work together. And they're just not quite sure, well, how does one get on a board and
Right.
what are those responsibilities? But they know they want to act, they know they want to give back. Um, and so we were thrilled that folks like you and JWF said, hey, we're in. How do we organize this program?
Sure. So, what are some of the topics that are covered in the program? And
Yeah.
in terms of like participation, do they have to come to every session? Can they just come for, one-off sessions? How does it work?
Yeah, such a great question. So, like I said, it's 9 months. It's completely virtual on Zoom. There's one program a month, and it is completely free. It is a completely free program. We have such amazing experts who are leading all the sessions, and they're highly interactive. And we have lots of breakout groups, and you're meeting folks. Um, but we've been able to make it completely free, which is great. The
Mhm.
idea is that the series of 9 months builds upon one another, but you
Right.
can absolutely come for one session, 7 sessions, or all nine. And here's the best part: we record all the sessions and we post them online, so you can always catch up or rewatch parts later. The
Mhm.
one thing you miss by not joining it live is we do often have, 70 to 100, 120 people so far have started joining each of the sessions. And so we do utilize the Zoom breakout rooms and break up
Mhm.
into a lot of smaller groups. The main sessions are recorded, the breakout rooms are not. The breakout rooms, I'll be honest, is for me part of the most fulfilling part of them, because I'm really getting to meet brand new people in the community. And we're exchanging information, where we're batting around ideas. And so that's a really rich part of it, where we're coming up with next steps and ideas about what to do and how to engage and make the world better. So you can get a lot of it by watching it
Mhm.
online after the fact. But it is incredibly fun to be part of it live.
And how many sessions are left for this year?
So we launched it in October. So if you're first, hearing about this, there is still plenty of time to join. You could easily watch all of the 3 sessions from October, November, December that you missed, or you can also just join us in January, having watched none of them. The next session is actually next week, January 20th. It is that evening from 5:30 till 7 p.m. next Wednesday, January 20th. And yes, that is Inauguration Day. And Monday, of course, is Martin Luther King Day. And we specifically had picked that week. This we planned this months ago, so it predates, I think, the heightened interest I think we all have in coming
Sure.
together to spend time together on Inauguration Day, to kind of think about what comes next and how does board service relate to that. But the idea was originally that we this was an important week to come together as around community service, around public leadership, around being public servants. The topic for this month in January is about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and the role that boards play in setting that tone and instilling those values in every decision that they make, and how boards can work on these issues and really evoke positive transformation for themselves as a board, for their agencies, and therefore in the communities that they serve. So I think the timing of this,
Mhm.
well, let's just say I think it will be an interesting conversation next Wednesday,
I'm
to say the
sure.
very least. I mean, if we didn't already pick a really important topic, wow, Wednesday night, that's going to be quite a conversation.
Right. So I want to talk about that a little bit more in depth. So, I mean, I'm sure that you have read lots of research around diversity on boards.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sure we have lots of people watching and listening today who may be in a position to be recruiting for board members from their organization. And so, let's talk a little bit more about why it's important to have diversity on boards, both from a gender perspective, but also from a racial perspective.
Yeah, I think what I have continued to learn over my 20-year career, and I continue to learn, just being part of this community, is that we all come with different perspectives. We all come with different lived experiences. And when you only have one shared common perspective on a board, you're completely missing out. And what we particularly find, of course, is that a lot of nonprofits are trying to serve communities that they don't actually have a whole lot of knowledge about, other than a deep value and connection to wanting to make the world better. But
Sure.
we often have a lot of boards that are made up of very privileged white women and men, because often boards are made up of individuals who are also wealthy and have access to resources and power. And the communities that they're serving tend to be maybe Black, Latinx, LGBTQ communities, communities that have been very much systematically pushed away from access to power, access to resources, access to healthcare, food security, housing security, educational attainment. That these have been very deliberate, racist disparities and systems that have been set up. And so it's not knocking the folks on the boards. I think they're very well intentioned. I'm one of them, right? I serve on a lot of boards, and I'm very privileged and very fortunate. And I think that what we recognize is that you can't really serve a community unless you're creating a seat at the decision-making table for the community members who know best what the solutions are, for
Sure.
all the community needs. So you're seeing a real transformation in boards moving from paying lip service to, oh, we need to diversify, and that being a very check something off on, the
Right, like
box, like that,
tokenism.
yeah, tokenism, to more, okay, we have to dramatically not only change the makeup of the board, but how we make every decision. And what does that really mean to trust the communities that we're serving and to have community led leadership? So it is not a quick fix. It is not an easy answer. We, as the United States, for example, we've got this 400-year history of being steeped in racism, of, and all of our systems and structures are there. It's the air we breathe, the water we drink. It's just part of our systems and structures. And so undoing that, um, it's like you can't do it fast enough. Like you have to hurry history. And at the same time, we often don't know how to do it because we don't know anything different. So I think this session next Wednesday on the 20th for the Women on Board Leadership Academy on diversity, equity, inclusion, and truly creating a place where people feel like they belong, is going to be a fascinating conversation. And it is a great place for any board members of government agencies, of nonprofits, volunteers, to come to say, how do we really use our volunteerism for good instead of recreating the same systems that are part of the problem? Peeling back that onion, having those difficult conversations, learning how to see the world in a different way, and us show up and
Mhm.
utilize power and share power and dismantle systems and really like just change the whole thing. It is going to be an interesting conversation, and the learning so many of us have been doing. This is just one more step in that continuum.
Right. And also when boards have more diversity, they tend to just operate better. And then the companies or agencies are just much more effective at what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah, you make decisions completely differently when you have a different group of people around the table. When you're trusting again the communities that you're serving and you're inviting them to actually be at the decision making table, um, you come up with such different innovative ways of being of public service. And like you said, Jen, the organizations operate more effectively. They're much more aligned with true community needs. And it's really about that communication and that trust. And it starts by really changing who's at that decision making table.
So would you say that this Women on Board Leadership Academy is primarily for women who have never served on a board, or do you think that there's still value for women who have been board members or maybe currently are serving on a board?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. You're asking such helpful questions. It is absolutely for every person. I think that while you can't be all things to all people, and we were very clear in that when we created this, that the ideal person to come to this would be somebody who maybe is thinking, "Oh, I really want to get involved in a board, but I just don't know how to do it, and I don't really feel like I'm prepared. I need a leadership training course for it." Yes, that is absolutely the person we created this for. But as we all know, there's something here for everybody, because the speakers that we're having, the conversations we're having, are helping us unlearn things we need to unlearn.
Mm,
Right? You could have been on a board for 20 years, and quite frankly, as well intentioned as you've been, you could be
right.
doing it wrong. And I don't mean wrong like to be judgmental, but I mean like if you think it means going into another community and telling them what to do in order to solve their problems, that has probably not been as helpful, right? Or we would have, I think, seen all of the world's issues solved. So we might need to try doing something differently. So I share that to say all of the community, men included, are invited to come to our virtual programs and to be part of them. We have folks who have been on boards for 20, 30 years and are loving the new, fresh perspectives that they're gaining. We have people who are coming to the workshops who are brand new and are usually the volunteers who are coming in for the day where they're doing a community cleanup or stuffing envelopes. But the thought of seeing themselves as leaders is kind of a revolutionary idea to them. And now they're realizing wow, I've got great ideas and I know what I'm doing. And this training, this makes sense, right? I can handle this, I can do this. And they're feeling more confident and seeing themselves as the leaders that they truly are. Because I think the other big part that we're showing throughout all of the programs around board service is that not one of us is an island. We are all in this
Sure.
together and we are stronger together. And so this is about board service coming together as a group of governance volunteers to really lead. And leading means asking for help, looking to others for the solutions. It does not mean you know every single solitary thing and you're telling folks what to do. That is actually not leadership at all. Um, so I think this program is really open to everybody.
That's good to hear. So anyone who's listening, and we'll be happy to share the website at the end of the webinar, people who want to learn more. And I'm glad that you said that too, because I do think that a big challenge that women have is that they just don't view themselves as leaders, or they think, I don't have enough of X, Y, whatever skills to serve on a board, or why is someone interested in my ideas?
Yeah.
So certainly I hope that one outcome from the program too is just that it gets women thinking about it. And even if they're just learning the different topics, they'll begin to see themselves differently.
Yeah. And you know what it reminds me a lot of is the amazing program JWF leads for young leaders.
Oh,
Right. I
yes, our
mean,
Young Leaders Society.
yeah, and there's so much wonderful overlap. And what I've always said is that where organizations can collaborate and do programs together, that's brilliant because we don't need to do it alone. And I also always think there's plenty of room for each organization to have similar programs because there's so much need in the community. And so anyhow, I see the Young Leaders program that you all organize so well, and the Women on Board Leadership Academy that you're also part of, that what we're talking about today, as just being great programs that are
Mhm.
stepping stones for one another. You can go and participate in both simultaneously, and you'll have
Yes.
some similar topics, but different perspectives and different speakers.
Right. I agree. They are complementary, and thank you for mentioning that. We definitely sent out the information to everybody, but specifically really targeting the YLS members. And I know that some of them have signed up because board leadership is actually not an area that we cover in YLS. There's so many topics, right, to cover when you're talking
Yeah,
about leadership,
yeah.
especially when you're using a gender lens. And so there just aren't enough
There's
sessions in
no,
one
but I
year
think
to
that
cover that.
YLS, I hope people graduate from that and then see themselves as, oh gosh,
Yes.
and I should serve on a board. And then if you're not ready yet, you could go through the Women on Board Leadership Academy that JWF sponsors, and then build up that expertise and confidence to serve on a board as well. There's
Yes.
so many ways to serve and be a leader. It does
Yes,
not just board
100%.
leadership.
So yes, and I think that a lot of what JWF and Women's Foundation does is complementary. So that's why I think we end up partnering so much, on our different programs and things, because we're very much aligned in terms of our values. So
Yep.
yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And I forgot to mention at the beginning of the webinar that if anyone has a question about anything that we're discussing, please go ahead and use the Q&A feature, and Judith will be happy to answer your questions.
Absolutely.
So anything else specifically about Women on Board that you think that we should highlight?
Well, I'll just let you all know a couple of the upcoming topics. So like we said, next Wednesday, January 20th, 5:30 p.m., we have the workshop on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The next month in February, the program is focused on being an ambassador and advocacy. And so really, you're going to be learning about communication skills, advocacy work, really being an ambassador for the organizations you're serving with. In March, actually, Jen is facilitating one of the sessions. We're going to be talking about the culture of philanthropy, and really trying to demystify and make fundraising less scary, because I do hear oftentimes when I say,
Yes.
oh, you care about that mission so much, have you thought about joining blah, blah, blah board? They're like, oh, I don't want to fundraise.
Right. Yes.
I get it. Not everybody wants to ask people for money, but being on a board of directors, that culture of philanthropy, that role of being an ambassador, it is not just about saying, hey, Jen, will you donate $5,000 to my cause? Although if she has it, I should ask, and she might be very interested in giving it, right? If it's something she's already told me she cares about. But you can really be engaged in a board and do so much work to ensure the financial vibrancy of the organization without actually ever having to ask your friends for money. There's so many other ways
Yes.
to engage in the fiscal solvency of an organization. So that one in March, I really encourage you to come out and hear Jen talk, because that'll hopefully really make it less scary for so many people to take on the board leadership work. And then we have a session in May on financial literacy for board members.
Very
And
important.
then very, very
Yes,
important.
like how to read an organizational budget, for
Yep.
example. Yes.
Yeah. And the questions you should be asking, right? And to really make sure that the organization's financial health is going well. And then in Judith's graduation, we're doing a volunteer matchup.
Mm.
And making connections for folks who've been part of the program, and having a
Mhm.
graduation party and ceremony. And yes, likely that will still be all virtual, but we will figure out fun ways to make it engaging and fun. And again, any of the sessions you've missed, we post the recordings online, and you can always pull down, and watch them. And you can watch them via Zoom with a couple friends and talk about the ideas together.
Okay. So since you mentioned the fundraising piece, something else that came to mind, are there other misconceptions that you've heard about board participation beyond like the fundraising piece?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think sometimes what I hear is folks assume, again, you have to be wealthy to be on a board, that you have to be willing to do fundraising and raise lots of money, that you have to have a lot of experience already running organizations. I think that those are certainly things that folks would say, sure, that's helpful. But what most, in my experience, well-run organizations are really looking for out of board members is folks who have a deep connection to the mission, and
Mhm.
who are going to be strong ambassadors for the organization, building community partnerships and making connections, and to be thought leaders and thought partners with the organization's
Mhm.
leadership to figure out strategic plans and how to overcome obstacles and crises and things that come up. Here's a perfect example we all have right now, sadly, again in 2020 and now moving into 2021, the global pandemic. So think about all of the beautiful missions, all of the work that organizations had planned to lead, and then the dramatic impact of
Right.
COVID. So the need of the communities they're serving has now tripled or
Right.
quadrupled, but the ability to exercise their missions, carry out their operations, have been dramatically stunted, and every
Mhm.
obstacle you can think of has been put in their way. Right now, a board of directors is a staff's best friend, right? Because there are more people to sit there and to think through, how in the world do we overcome this obstacle? What are the brand new, fresh, innovative ways that we can think of to deliver to the community what we've promised and what they
Mhm.
need, while recognizing we can't in the same way see people in person, touch people
Right.
in person, hold great big meetings in person, change the way we fundraise, change the way we deliver on programs. And the needs of the community have just been so laid bare and exacerbated. So being on a board of directors right now is so much more about thinking calmly, staying
Mhm.
calm under crisis, and really putting smart people with innovative ideas together in a room who are willing to roll up their sleeves and say, how do we get through this and serve our community? Um,
Mhm.
and that's about sharing ideas. That's about bringing your values and your whole self to the conversation.
Sure, sure. And not to make it sound more daunting, but being a board member is a pretty serious
It
responsibility
is.
for an
Yeah.
organization. I mean, there are like legal ramifications to being a board member a lot of the time and being fiscal agents for an organization. So, um, I think it's fun and it's a really great way to engage with an organization whose mission is close to one's values. But it's also, like a pretty serious responsibility. So,
Yeah.
and I have to say that, we have an excellent board of directors, and I'm, very grateful for everything that they've done. And like you said, especially during times like these, which were so, unexpected, and we've had to be resilient and pivot,
Yeah.
and having that board of directors for me as a CEO and for the staff, I think are just another set of ideas and people to support what we're doing.
Yeah, really that partnership between board members and staff members and the communities that they serve, that's the fundamental piece. That's really the foundation for providing, you know, some kind of community good, some impact that's positive. Because I'll just hear me say it again and again, we're not an island, right? I
Right.
mean, organizations that try to have one person at the top, whether it be the president of the board or the president of the organization, make all of the decisions, that might work in the short term, but when a pandemic pops up, you need all hands on deck. And so I really think what I value most from the boards that I've been on or the boards I'm working with as staff
Mm-hmm.
is when there is a communicative, collaborative, all ideas are welcome,
Mm-hmm.
complete transparency, and just all hands on deck mentality. It doesn't mean you don't know the different roles, right? There is absolutely a division of responsibility, and
Sure.
every board and staff team works differently.
Right.
Based upon the size and the needs of the organization. But
Sure.
the ability to have strong communication and collaboration and transparency, I think, is why you see some organizations actually doing very well during the
Yes.
pandemic in carrying out their missions, because they have the full resources of all of these incredibly caring public leaders on their boards and on their staffs, versus the ones that are really struggling because they have this mentality that one person makes all of the decisions.
Right. Which is never good. Like,
No,
even if one person had the capacity to, which they really don't,
no,
that's not really best practice or what's best for the organization. So
no.
I can, so we're a relatively small staff right now of three plus, some consultants. And I work very closely with our board chair, who is wonderful. And for me, the board really is my partner
Yeah,
in, moving the mission forward, because I cannot, do that by myself, and the staff cannot do it,
you can't.
by ourselves. Like, that the board really is our partner in being able to reach out to new people or have new ideas or different perspectives. And it's such a critical role, I think, that's played. And I think that you can see too, the flip side is that when the board is not aligned with the staff,
Yeah.
or the communication is not transparent, or people don't understand their role before they become a board member, then it seriously impacts the organization, and not for the better.
So true. So true. That's why I think the Women on Board Leadership Academy, that organizations, like the Jewish Women's Foundation, like the Junior League, like, Delta Sigma Theta, YWCA, all these organizations that have come together create the Women on Board Leadership Academy. It's that they recognize these are all nonprofits who are constantly looking for board members. And
Right.
so if we provide a leadership training to really empower board members so they understand their responsibilities and the amazing impact that they can have, these organizations will grow and flourish, and the community's needs will be better met. So this is absolutely a program about leadership, and it is absolutely a program that is very self-serving, I think, for all the organizations in a positive way, which is we all need amazing board members. And we want to diversify these boards, and we want to bring new ideas and new faces and new visions to these boards. So excited. Again, League of Women Voters, Dress for Success, Compass, Nonprofits First, like I said, the Women's Foundation, and Junior League, the Women's Chamber of Commerce of Palm Beach County, Connect to Greatness. I mean, the list just goes on and on. There's a
Right.
whole host of organizations that are collaborating on the Women on Board Leadership Academy, and
Sure.
just thrilled about it.
I think another piece of the diversity too is also the age, right? I mean, I think that maybe another misconception that women have, is that you have to be, X years old, to join a board, that somebody in their 20s or their 30s doesn't have anything to bring to the table or doesn't have enough experience. But I'm sure you'll agree, it's really important to get, diversified age groups involved on boards. And for women who, see themselves as leaders earlier on, I think that's even better, because if you get on a board, you have the opportunity, especially if you've gone through the training, to really understand what your role is and to be the best board member possible. And then you just keep growing through the leadership as you get older.
Yeah, I think that's a great, great point, Janet. I'm so glad you raised it. And I would really love to see more boards understand the importance of diversity of age as well. I totally appreciate that a lot of boards tend to select folks who have economic means and who are retired, so they have the flexibility to come and
Right.
volunteer and to be engaged in all of the activities. I get that, right? But that is a very tunnel vision, narrow view. And we encourage folks to like get rid of that idea because your young people who are in school or who are working and maybe they can't write a great big $5,000 check every time you ask, they absolutely can roll up their sleeves and give you great feedback and volunteer on programs and give you really sound operational guidance around what the community is really needing.
Right.
Um, and from a perspective that if the majority of the staff are 20, 30 years older than these young people, and then the board members are 20, 30 years more senior than the staff, you want the diversity and the intergenerational conversations because those are all fresh perspectives. It's not that one is right and one is wrong. It's that,
Right.
again, I know it sounds cliche, but we are stronger together, right?
Right.
When you have a 20-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, a 70-year-old, an 80-year-old, all part of the conversation. And when there's different sexual orientations and when there's different races and different religions and different economic circumstances that we all bring to the table, wow,
Right.
what a different conversation that is. And therefore, the innovations you come up with, it just goes to reason they're going to be more meaningfully
Sure.
addressing the community because it's not just one narrow perspective.
Right. Right. And I think, when choosing board members, it's important the diversity piece, both ethnically, sexual orientation, all of that, geographically, even, I think, depending on what your organization
Yeah.
does. But I think a really important thing to keep in mind as someone who's looking for board members also is the skill set, right?
Mhm.
Like, I think that that's kind of a best
Yeah.
practice to look at the skills that you want for your board
Yeah.
members. Maybe, there are skills that the staff doesn't necessarily have. And so that's like an added bonus is to bring someone on who really can add something, substantively. And I think that that's also where maybe younger people come in too, where they have really great skill sets or they have connections to other communities that the other board members do not. And that adds so much value, I think, into strengthening the board and the organization overall.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so true. And, for folks who are watching and listening or thinking, gosh, someday I want to be on the board of the Jewish Women's Foundation or the Women's Foundation of Florida, why don't we both share a little bit about what it is, how it is one goes about becoming on a board? Because again, every board is different. Some boards say you have to have volunteered with them already. Some will
Right.
just pluck you off the street. Some have an interview process, some don't. Jen, as you and your board are looking for new members to move into that leadership volunteer role, what are you all looking for? What is that process like?
So for JWF, we are a membership organization in
Yeah.
part, right? So we have what we call trustees who commit to a certain dollar amount over 3 years, which supports the work that we do and enables them to sit on our committees. And so anyone who is in a leadership role, including board members, have to be a trustee first. I would say that we often like to see a trustee be involved on a committee, possibly, in a chair role, and kind of learn a little bit about their leadership experience before we, consider them for a board position. So, because I think it's important that someone has for us, an understanding of how the organization works and what our culture is before, being in such an important role like a board member.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Women's Foundation of Florida, we're similar in that we invite board members from the volunteers and community members we already know. If
Right.
somebody approaches us to say, hey, you look like a great organization and I'm interested in being on your board, we say, thank you so much. And the very first step is join a committee and start volunteering and get involved in our programs
Right.
because we absolutely want folks who already understand what's special about our programs, what are the areas where our programs need to improve or change in some way, because they've experienced them. So
Right.
we ask for folks to first volunteer and pick from one of the multitude of different programs that we have and get engaged that way. And then we'll come and loop back around and say, okay, now that you've been doing this for a little while, let's talk about, the responsibilities of being on the board. And there's that whole process and interview process that happens. But we also really want folks that have been engaged in our programs in some way. That is not true of all organizations, and that, there's different ways of doing things. Some
Sure.
organizations will absolutely say, hey, you want to be on the board? Here's the list of commitments. If you can do it, great. And you learn about the programs while being on the board. It doesn't surprise me, though, knowing, we've been friends for so many years. We met when we were in, working on our master's in nonprofit management together. And, so I think it doesn't surprise me that organizations we're engaged with have that similar volunteer first, engagement first piece.
Right.
But
right. I mean, our board is like a working board, right? Like that's, I know that there are organizations, especially ones that are much larger than ours, where maybe there are board members who, they do like to contribute financially, but maybe that's their primary role as a board member. And that's just not the way that we operate. We really want our board members to be actively engaged in the work that we're doing and supporting our mission. We think that that's really important. So
yeah, folks often laugh at me because you've probably heard me say this too over the years. I regularly will say somebody who gives to an organization, even a major gift, a very, very large, substantial gift, is a donor. It's not a board member, right? Like, and thank you. And we cannot survive without you. We need that investment, and we are incredibly thankful for all of our donors. But if your only connection to the organization is that you write a very large check, what I say in return is thank you. We forever appreciate it. And here's all the ways that we want to steward you and make sure that you're engaged in the programs and know about them in whatever way works for you. But that does not ensure you're placed on the board of directors. I think all board of directors members should give. I think it can be whatever is meaningful to them. Everybody can be at a different financial capacity of the gift they're giving. But I'm a little bit different than other folks who think that, hey, writing a big check secures you a spot on the board. I think that's a donor. I don't think
no, I would agree with you. And we also have, I guess, the same philosophy because we don't, I would say, that's a donor and not necessarily a board member. I think philanthropic leadership is definitely a type of leadership. But it's not necessarily the same thing as what's required of a board member.
No, that's just one part of the board responsibilities. One part of it is philanthropic leadership. And as we've discussed, that can be accomplished in many different ways. But that is just one part of it. And if the only thing you do, while it is incredibly valuable and deeply appreciated, is write a check, that might be great for a development committee. That could be really great for a committee for a specific special event. But board members really need to understand the missions of the organization, deeply engage in being ambassadors, regularly building community partnerships and connections, being there to be those thought partners with CEOs and senior staff, really understanding the governance role, the fiduciary responsibilities, those financial roles and statements that go well beyond simply the philanthropic leadership, although that is, of course, a valued part.
Right. Because we look at our board members as, examples to everyone else, right? And so if you can't, I don't think, be an effective leader of an organization and inspire other people to get involved if you don't have a complete understanding of what the organization does. So, yes. Just looking at some questions that are that are coming in. Okay, so for anyone who is interested in getting involved or participating in the sessions, can you just give the dates for the remaining sessions, and then I guess include the website where people can learn more?
Absolutely. So the Jewish Women's Foundation, the Women's Foundation of Florida, and all the other organizations we talked about that are jointly co-sponsoring the Women on Board Leadership Academy, we will make sure that you have information. You can always email or text any one of us. But the next workshop is next Wednesday, January 20th at 5:30 p.m. And that one, as we said, is on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging as part of board leadership and service. The next workshop after that is February 3rd, and that's on board advocacy and ambassadorship. That one is actually at 12 p.m., 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. And the other ones that are being hosted, again, these are every month between now and June. They're up on our website, which is Women's Foundation Florida. So womensfoundationfl.org /WOBLA, Women on Board Leadership Academy. And Jen, are the workshops up on your JWF calendar as well?
You know what? I'm not sure that they are, but we'll go ahead and add them.
Yeah, so we'll get those over to you. So all the dates, so JWF members can see them directly on the website and be able to register directly from there, because that's probably easier as well. But the key thing is the program is free, and it is a collaboration across JWF and the Women's Foundation, Junior League, Delta Sigma Theta, Dress for Success, Nonprofits First, as I said, group after group
Yes.
after group. So it is free because of the collaboration across all these organizations, and we really encourage everybody who's interested to join. Whether you are brand new and thinking, I'm not quite sure that I have what it takes to be on a board. Yes, you do. Come learn. And for those of you who have been on boards for 20, 30 years and are wanting to mentor others and share your learnings and also gain some fresh perspectives and new trends and ideas, this is also for you. It is a really phenomenal program with really cool interactive speakers. And I think just the networking and the breakout
Sure.
rooms and the connections folks are making and taking back to their organizations and finding ways to collaborate across communities. It's thrilling. It's fun to see.
So I included the link in the chat, so everybody should be able to access that if they want to go to the Women's Foundation website. But we definitely will add the rest of the sessions to our calendar. Thank you for reminding me. We should have done that sooner.
There's just never enough hours in the day.
Yes. So we had a question that just came through. So what resources do you use for all the board forms and documents for best practices?
So there are groups like Board Source and the
Yes.
Foundation Center and others that have compiled over the years, obviously, some great best practices. And so, for example, Nonprofits First, which is one of the organizers of the program with us, Jessica Searcy, their CEO, who's been one of the trainers in our program, is a certified Board Source trainer. And so she and other organizations have been able to really encourage, as we're training all of these future board members and current board members, on the best practices that are out there. I think what we're also doing a lot of and suggesting, as we've talked about, particularly again as we approach this work with a renewed commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, is that some of the best practice ways of doing things probably need to be turned on their head and changed in some ways, right? Because some of those best practices have been based upon systems of white privilege and economic privilege that certainly are not necessarily best serving all of the community. So I think that there are great best practices out there. And I also always encourage board members to think about and what is also best serving of the community, and ensuring that we are truly listening to the communities that we're serving, giving them, really saying, hey, we trust you, and we're going to want to sit at a table with you and make decisions together about how to really invest in the community and be true partners, as opposed to just trying to come in and tell a community, here's what you need, as if they don't already know. Of course they do. We ought to listen to them more.
Like the paternalistic approach.
Exactly, which many nonprofits do and many nonprofits don't, right? There's always good apples and bad apples on the bunch. I think the other thing that is exciting is that, of course, we all know how to Google, and not everything you read on the internet is good and helpful, but I think, we're a smart group of people who are able to discern, as we look for resources online, what is helpful and what is not. Another great website I always suggest to folks, the Management Center. It's a nonprofit that has tremendous free resources and tools and trainings for staff and board members at at nonprofits and government agencies,
Hmm.
that share some really phenomenal ways of how you can communicate and set agendas and build
Hmm.
trust and set plans. So there's also so many phenomenal tools out there.
Yes, and I would second that Board Source is probably the primary place that I go. I know that some things are behind a paywall for Board Source, but a lot of the resources are also free.
Yeah,
So I would
great
definitely
resource.
recommend that. So we have a few minutes left before we close out. So since Judith, you asked about it for Young Leaders Society, I'm going to
Yeah.
go ahead and have a little plug for that. So Young Leaders Society is JWF's leadership development program for young women who are, we say, usually early 20s to about 45. And our program actually is starting at the end of this month. And so we meet January through December. Of course, we're meeting virtually as well this year. But that does have the benefit, same as Women on Board, where women can really live anywhere and participate in YLS. We have facilitated sessions every month, and actually Takeda, who is the executive director of the Women's Foundation, will be facilitating our advocacy session. And
Of
Judith,
course.
you have done that before in the
Yeah,
past
she's
as
the
well.
premier
Uh,
advocate out there.
Yes. So we really like to bring in experts in a subject area, and they facilitate the session for that month. And then 3 of the months that we meet are a giving circle. So each
I so
participant.
love this model. Thank you for creating such a cool model to
Oh, well,
build young leaders. I mean, the combination of advocacy, leadership programs, and philanthropy in the giving circle, like it just fits together so well.
yeah, thank you. We think so too. We try to cover different types of leadership. And so if anyone is interested in applying, we still have about 2 weeks, I believe, until we have to stop accepting applications. We do only take a small group of women because we like to develop a cohort kind of feeling through the group. So it is limited, but there's still a few spaces left. And our website is jwfpalmbeach.org, and you can find information about YLS on that site. So I think, yeah, Judith, I think we can probably wrap up. We had some good questions, and I think we certainly learned a lot about Women on Board. So hopefully we'll get a lot of people who go to your site and want to sign up and participate in some of the sessions. So thank you again for speaking with me and being on our Impact Tuesday webinar.
Well, thank you again, Jennifer, for creating the Impact Tuesday program, for being such a phenomenal colleague and leader in our community. And of course, thank you for always partnering. Our 2 organizations have always partnered. I've always been thrilled to be a past trustee, a donor and supporter, and beneficiary of the JWF programs. And just thanks to everybody who's been participating in this webinar and everybody who will watch it later. There's so many great organizations out there, and we just encourage you to get engaged and involved in whatever way you can. And tap a friend on the shoulder and say, hey, come to this next webinar with me for the Women on Board Leadership Academy. It is fun. You will learn something. It'll be an interesting conversation. Again, whether you're new to board service or you've been doing it for 30 years, there's a conversation to be had about what does women's leadership look like in board service. We're thrilled to do this kind of work together. So
Yes, we love to collaborate with Women's Foundation. We're happy to support the program because, we know as social change organizations that if we're going to make real long-term change for women and girls, then women have to be in leadership positions.
yes,
And that includes being on a board. So
yes.
I encourage
Okay.
everyone to get involved. Again, our website is jwfpalmbeach.org. The Women's Foundation website is in the chat, so please everyone use that. I want to wish everybody a happy new year.
Yes.
And we look forward to seeing you on another webinar. So take care, everybody. And thank you, Judith.
Thanks for making an impact this Tuesday, Jen.
Thank you, Judith.
Bye.
Bye.